Hi, my name is Lee Bowie and I'm a technology evangelist with IBM, and I'm going to show you how to get Docker and Kubernetes running quickly on your machine and getting on the cloud with your Kubernetes instance. So everything you need for this tutorial is going to be in this document. I'll link to it below. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to, on your own local machine in your Docker, we're going to grab an image from Docker Hub. We're going to run it, customize it. And then what we're going to do is in a Kubernetes instance running on your local machine in Minikube, we're going to push that image to that container. We're going to expose it in Kubernetes. Then what we're going to do is push that same container to the IBM cloud. And then we're going to expose it in Kubernetes on the IBM cloud. All right, so first thing we want to do is if you're running from your command line terminal in Linux, you'll want to put sudo in front of your Docker commands. So if not, you can just run this as in your home directory on Windows or Mac. Commands are the same. All right, so we already have that image, but just to show you what it looks like is we do a docker pull nginx. All right, so and then it would pull the image down just like that. So the next thing we want to do is we want to actually run this container just to make sure it works and looks the way we expect it. So what we'll do is we'll do a docker run, and we'll give our container our own unique name, my-nginx. All right, so the way we can check to see if that's actually working is we can do a docker ps. Oops, got to spell it right. And there it is, it's running. So now here's the port that it's running on. Let's just grab that. And then what we'll do is we'll check this in a browser to see what it looks like. All right, so we'll just use localhost as our host name and colon that actual port. And I'll move this over here so you guys can see what this looks like. Eventually, gonna have to edit. All right. So then when you go to that host name and that port, this is what you'll see. Welcome to Nginx. Okay, that's great. So that's working as we expect it to. So now what we want to do is we want to do some customization. So what we're going to do is we'll make a directory called nerds, and I've already cooked it ahead of time. It's in here. And then we'll put these 3 files in here. So just to show you, this is just a typical index HTML, just looks like that. You can put anything in there, doesn't really matter. This is just a typical Nginx configuration file, very simple. There's all of this, this text is in the actual document that I referred to at the beginning. And then we have our Docker file. So what our Docker file does is define what our Docker image is going to look like. This one's very simple. It just says from the Nginx image, so build off of that, copy the index file to here in that image, and copy this Nginx configuration file to here. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually issue the build commands to build that. And it's pretty simple commands. So all you have to do is do a, oops, I pasted that in without getting my sudo in there first. So we do that. So there you can go. As you can see, it's going through the Docker file. So it's telling you what it's built and what it's done. So now if we do a Docker images, what we'll see is we have our custom image there now. So now what we want to do is run that custom image and see what it looks like, see if it worked for us. All right, that looks good. So what we could do is just do another docker ps to make sure it's running in there. And there it is. All right, and here's the actual port that it's running on. So if we go back to our browser and we just change that to a 9 because it took the next one, look at that. We have our custom container running there. So that's great. So now what we want to do is we want to push this to a Docker repo that is in Minikube, which is like just an easy way to get Kubernetes running on your local machine. And it works across platforms, which is great. So, if you're a development team and you're all using Minikube to test things on your own laptops, that's great. So let's just make sure that it's started. So let's do a Minikube start. Perfect, it's running. So then what we'll do is we'll do a Minikube, and what we'll do is we'll just set our environment so that it's actually pointing to the Minikube environment, that the Docker that's running in the Minikube environment. All right, so then we'll just run this as it tells us to do. And now if we do a Docker images, we'll notice that's the default configuration for the Docker images that are in Minikube. So that's great. So we're off to a good start. So now what we want to do is we want to build that same custom image, but build it in the Docker repository that's running in Minikube. So we just issue the same command that we did before. Where is it now? Here we go. So we want that build command. We don't need the sudo this time because you only need that because to run the local Docker environment on a Linux box, you need to be root. So we'll build that. And you can see now it's pulling the Nginx container down because it doesn't have that container image in the Docker repo that's in Minikube. So that'll take a sec. And then what we'll do is we'll just do the same thing we did before. Is we'll take a look to see what images are there and make sure our image is there, and then we'll customize that image exactly like we did before, and then we'll expose it as a service in Kubernetes. All right, so we're there. So now what we want to do is we want to create a deployment from that. First thing we should do, though, let's just make sure our custom image is in this repo as well. So there it is. So what we're going to want to do is tag that. And then take a look at that again. Make sure that's still there. All right, so we have one that's not tagged and we have one that is tagged. That's great. So now what we're going to do is we're going to deploy that in Kubernetes. So now this is where we start using our kube control commands. And it's pretty much that simple. So we'll say create a new deployment from our custom image. So this is an extremely simple example where we only have one pod running one container. So we're trying to do this simple so we can do it quickly and show it to you. But it could be multiple containers, multiple pods, different situations. But this is you can learn that as you go. Once you understand these concepts, you can move on from there. So now what we're going to do is we'll just make sure that we've got our pods running. And there it is. That's great. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to expose that deployment. So how we do that is with a kube control expose command, and we'll just let that run. So that says that's been exposed. So what we'll do is we'll just make sure it's there. We'll check our services. That's great. It says my deployment is running. That's awesome. And the next thing we're going to do is let's just use a Minikube command to see which deployments are actually running right now. Okay, so it's the my deployment is running on this port here. So all we have to do is open this link. And when we open this link, hopefully we'll see the same thing we saw last time. So we'll just open that. And I'll just drag it over here so you guys can see it. And there we go, it worked. So there we go. You can see it's running on a different IP range there because Minikube sets its own IP range up. So that's great. So we got it running locally on our machine in Kubernetes. So the next thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to push that to the cloud. Another cool little feature of Minikube is it's a full-blown Kubernetes environment. It actually has the same dashboard that you would find on cloud implementations of Kubernetes. So what you can do is you can run a dashboard, and what you'll see is the same thing you would normally see. And so it's a good little tool to have if you just want to check things. Just bring it over here so you guys can see it. So you can see everything's green. That's what you want. You can go in, you can check things individually, like the services and what they're doing, everything. So that's just a great little tool to have. All right, we'll stop that. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to move that image up to the IBM Cloud, and we're going to host it in Kubernetes on IBM Cloud. So just log into IBM Cloud using the IBM Cloud login command. If you're an IBMer, you'll need to use the -SSO switch on that. I'm just using my free account that I set up, just so it's like the same kind of privileges everybody else has. So once you're in there, we should check out our container registry namespaces. How we do that is with the CR command, container registry, and we do name spaces. And there we go. So it's telling us what I called it, where it is, and what the name of it is. So that's all great. So that's everything that we need to know. So what we want to do is take a look at our images that we have in Minikube right now. And we can see we've got a bunch of images here. I've also tagged one with this. So you'll see there, that's there, and this is there. So what this is, I'll just tag it again just so you guys can see what that looks like. So it's just a Docker tag, and then what we do, so then you specify the image you want to tag. So we do my custom image, and then we want to give it the tag of the actual container repo we want to send it to, and the actual version that we want to send there as well. So this is just like there's no real source destination pushing of images, so it uses the tag to know where to push an image to. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to push that image up to the IBM Cloud. So how we do that is we just specify the tag that we had in the image list. And there we go. Then it pushes it up to the IBM Cloud. And sometimes you'll get this resources denied thing. I think it's a timing issue. It's because what you can do is you can have separate permissions for your actual repos. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to log into the repo. And that's just a simple IBM Cloud CR login command. I kind of understand why they'd want you to do this, because then you could actually set up separate permissions on the repos that you create. So I'm thinking of a use case where you have a dev team and they all access this same repo, but you set it up. So you could give them separate credentials to access that repo that are not the same kind of credentials you would give them to create clusters or create namespaces within your container registry. All right, so let's do that push again. All right, so it's pushed up our custom image. It's just finishing up. I got a super slow internet connection. So the next thing we'll do after this is we'll look at the actual image in our container registry in IBM Cloud, just to make sure it's there and it looks right. All right, our image is there. So let's take a look. At our image list. And there it is, my custom image. That's good. So one thing that the container registry does on IBM Cloud, it also scans your images for security issues. We're just going to ignore that right now, but it's a great little feature of that repository. So in this case, we're just gonna expose it and bring it right down again. So none of these issues are relevant. Plus, this is a throwaway account, so it's not a big deal in this particular scenario. So now what we're going to do is we're going to see if we have any clusters created, any Kubernetes clusters created. So let's take a look and see what we got for clusters here. We got nothing, so that's great. So let's build one. Now that our image is up there and it looks good, what we're going to do is we're going to create our cluster, our Kubernetes cluster in IBM Cloud. So how we do that is we issue a ks cluster command, create. It's just going to be a classic style Kubernetes cluster. We'll give it a name. We'll call it LBB-cluster. You can call it whatever you want. So it's creating a free cluster with the free account. Now I'll let you know that this can take up to half an hour. So I'll see you back here in a sec. All right, let's just check and see if our cluster is ready. All right, so there it is, it's ready. With state normal means it's ready. If it says pending or anything else, that means it's not ready. Usually takes, I'd say 20 minutes or so to I just checked it now, so it's 23 minutes and it's ready. So where do we want to go from here is let's use that cluster. Let's put something up in there. All right. Scrolling on the scroll wheel. Bow, bow. Scrolling on the scroll wheel. All right. So the first thing we want to do is check that our kube control command is pointing to that cluster that we just created. So how we do that is we do an IBM Cloud ks cluster config, and that will do everything for us. So then we just have to give it the name of the cluster, and that is LBB-cluster. Boom. So that'll set the context for our kube control, and then the way we can check that is we can just run a kube control, and there we go. It's pointing to our cluster. That's great. So everything's working there. So now what we want to do is we want to create a deployment with our image that we've pushed up there. So what we'll do is we'll use kube just like we did before, except the only difference is where it is will be different. We'll give it a different name. We'll call it my IKS for IBM Kubernetes Service. And then we'll give it a image, and the image name is very similar to it's what we used in the tag. It's actually a lot of the same information. And give it the repo name. And we call this my custom image. And we also want to give it the version number. So that's one thing that's really nice about Kubernetes. with the version numbers, you can have multiple versions of the same images, tag them in your builds and that kind of scenario. Plus, when you're actually deploying those images, you can say, keep version 1 running in a pod until all the users are out of it, and then as they get out, move them over to a pod that's got version 2 on it. All right, let's run that command to create that deployment. And there it is, happened that quickly. So let's just make sure that that is actually running. So what we'll do is we'll expose that deployment right now. Same command that we used when we exposed the deployment in Minikube. Let's make sure it's running. All right, there it is. Okay, so now here's the thing. Now what we want to do is find out where this thing is running so that we can get to it on the internet. So if we run a describe, what that will do is that'll give us a bunch of information, but the part that we care about here is the node port. You'll see this looks very similar to the node that we got before when we were running Minikube. So we'll just copy that. And then what we'll do is we'll find out what IP it's running on. So we will do a IBM Cloud, get some more details on the actual cluster. So it's all done through the worker nodes. So we need to see what our worker node is exposing the service on. All right, that takes a second. All right, so we have our public IP address. So my inclination is always to, let's just make sure that that is really up and running and really exposed. So let's just ping it just to make sure. And oops, helps if you put the right number in there. That's why cutting and pasting is better. There we go. It lives. So now what we want to do is take that number and this number, 32133, open that up in a browser and see if our custom image is now running in the IBM Cloud. There it is. So there you go. We are done. So that's great. So if you have any questions, the best place to reach me is on LinkedIn. You can find me as Lee Bowie on LinkedIn, and you can reach out to me there, or you can just place a comment in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching.